Kumlan and Ablat Gemara. Today's daf is daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, just to bring you up to speed. So in our Mishnah, we talked about if a woman was married, but she never had a chance to consummate that marriage. She dies straight away. She's entitled to now, and then she gets remarried. You have to assume that she's a bu'ula, and therefore she's only entitled to a mana. And you have no right to claim about she wasn't a psula, because the moment you got married, you should have expected that something happened. Doesn't matter what you heard. Then we had an argument. If you thought that she was a psula and you married her and turned out to be a bull, according to Rav Sheshes, she's still entitled to a mana instead of 200, and you're married. And according to Rava, it's a mekar tas, the whole thing. You thought that she's a psula, it turned out to be bula, it unravels completely. So then we brought a brisa. In this brisa, she did get married to, let's say, Ruvain. But what happened in this case, more than the Mishnah, was not only you heard that he died pretty much straight away afterwards, there was actually witnesses that said they never consummated the marriage. And then she goes ahead and married another person. The brisa here says still that other person cannot claim tainus psulim, because you should have expected that she's not a psula, the fact that she got married, even though there were witnesses there. So let's start from the top of the page again. So Rabbi wants to learn from here. We sort of stop in the middle. Top of the page, Yud Beis Amud Aleph on top. Amar Rabba says, Rabba, Zoyse Medes, from the fact that you tell me that even though there were witnesses that said that she had no relationship with the first husband, nevertheless, you cannot complain and she's entitled to a mana, and you cannot say anything, even though you had every right to believe that she was a psula. So Zoyse Medes, from here I would glean that I would agree with Rav Sheshes, says Rabba. I would agree with Rav Sheshes that says that if you married someone thinking she's a psula, turned out to be that she's a bula, still she's entitled to a ksuva mana, and most Mepharshim learned that whatever we say regarding a ksuva also refers to regarding to the Isser as well, that they can live together. So there's a ksuva of a mana, and you should have anticipated that. Rabbi Ashi says no. But Alma, I agree with Rava. Generally speaking, I think that's a mekar tas. You thought she's a psula and turned out to be a bula, it's a mekar tas. But this case is different. This case here, the fact that she got married, the fact that she got married, the moment she got married, even though the witnesses that they did not consummate the marriage, you should have thought in your mind she's not a psula. Says the Gemara, the Nechush, in our Mishnah, it says that if she was an almana from a marriage, and you heard that or he died pretty much straight away afterwards, you heard that they had no relationship, and then you married, you have no tainus psulim. The nechish shemetachtav zintra. I don't understand, says Rashi, the way Rashi learns the Gemara. The reason why we want you to go to bed in the morning is you don't really know what happened, why she's not a psula. So you wanted the word to get out, and if there were witnesses that she was mazana while they were engaged, fine. So they'll come forward, and then you'll know that it's also to you. So, or worse. So why are we saying here there's no tainus psulim if she was married to somebody and he died right after the chuppah? So they didn't really consummate the marriage, and you then married her. You say, oh, she wasn't a psula. We say no tainus psulim. Don't come to court. Don't front up or anything else. Why not? Let her front of the court. Maybe there were witnesses that between his engagement to her and their marriage, and usually it's 12 months apart, she was mazana, and therefore there's no marriage anymore. And worse, for chayiv skila. So why are we preventing justice to take place? Amar Rav Shravi says, you know why? We're talking about an exceptional case. We're talking about a case here is where they got engaged the second time around. She got engaged, and like we do today, and immediately afterwards they went to the chuppah. So it was impossible that anything happened in between, and there's no point in going to Bezdin. So that's one version of the machlekes on this brisa on the bottom, where there were witnesses that they never able to consummate their marriage, the first marriage. However, these are those who learn on the Mishnah, and where there were no witnesses at all that they didn't consummate the marriage, just almana grusha chalutza min. It says in the Mishnah that a psula and almana grusha and chalutza from marriage, but they never consummated the marriage. Kesuvos and mana, the Kesuvos, and then she marries a second time. You can't say, "Oh, I anticipate that she'll be a bull," even though she, they never consummated the marriage. The ein lehen tainus psulim. Min hanesuyin heichem mishkachas. How can that be? How can it be at all? What's the case exactly over here that you're telling us? Is going to come to the chuppah. We're talking about a case here where they went to the chuppah, but there was no ilah whatsoever. So therefore, you might think it'd be a target psulim, but there isn't, because the fact is they got married. Amar Rabbi, listen, he learned out. Concept I agree with Rav Sheshes that if you married someone thinking she's a psula or nimtzas bula turned out to be a bula, the ksuvas amana is no excuse. So you should have anticipated the ksuvas amana. And Rav Ashi says Rav Ashi says no. I hold like Rava that if you thought she's a psula, turned out to be a bula, you were cheated, and therefore that there's no ksuva whatsoever. And Vishayni Hocha, and here is different. The reason over here why you should anticipate it is because she was already married. In the case of the Mishnah, she was married, and even though they didn't consummate the marriage, you should already thought, you're no longer thinking about on the lines of a psula. Why aren't we worried? Shema tachtos, and so let him go to court anyway, so that in his own marriage, in his second marriage, maybe between the kedushin and the nesuin during that 12-month period, she was mezana, and maybe that's the reason why there's no psulim, and therefore there are witnesses out there. Rav Shrabi kiddush ubol out, and it's talking about with the second marriage, the kedushin and the nesuin happened straight away, and therefore there's no point in bringing witnesses. Man the masnila brisa, the one who says that learns that this argument of Rabbi Ramashi is referring to the brisa where there were witnesses that they didn't consummate the marriage, and is coach Kain Amasnisin, surely that even the brisa, there were witnesses that nothing happened. So he had every right to say, I trusted the witnesses, and I'm sure if witnesses tell me that nothing happened, then I can argue definitely she's a psula. So according, why shouldn't I feel cheated? Why shouldn't I feel deceived? It turned out to be that she wasn't a psula. And yet, nevertheless, the fact that they got married, he should have anticipated. He should have thought to himself, maybe the reason why the Edom are coming in here is they're just trying to I guess, make her more endear her in my eyes. So they said that they never consummated the marriage. That's all. They didn't mean it literally. They were just saying it figuratively. No, the Jihad was married to the guy, for a few minutes, so therefore she's all right. So therefore, Madach in the case where there were witnesses that nothing happened. Yet we say you should have anticipated that once you got married, it doesn't matter for 5 minutes, that she is a bu'ul. So surely in the case of the Koshken Amastis, in the case of the Mishnah, there were no witnesses that said it didn't consummate. We just saw that time-wise there was not enough time. But we don't know for 100% that didn't consummate. Maybe they consummate even before that. Because 100, since we don't know for sure, you cannot argue, I was convinced that she was a psula. You can't say that. So if you hold that in the Mishnah and the surely in the Braisa, the same thing would apply. If you hold that in the Braisa, the surely in the case of the Mishnah, everyone holds that you anticipate that she was a bula, and therefore there's no discussion, no time to sulim. She's entitled to 100, and Abashi would be murdered. Of the man the masla masdisin, those who say that they're arguing in the case of the Mishnah, in the case of the Mishnah, Ashi agrees with that, but look, they were married, you should have anticipated. But Abraisa, in the case where the witnesses that came forward and said they definitely did not consummate the marriage, Ashi would argue and say, no, you were deceived. Then over there, no. Then maybe in the case of the Mishnah, there wouldn't be, maybe they would, we would say that everyone would agree that he could have, or at least Ashi would definitely say, 1 second, Adam said there's nothing happened there. Therefore, she was deceived, and there's a mekataz, the whole thing. I thought I relied on the Edim. I was convinced that she was a psula. Now that she's a bu'ula, the whole thing is a mekataz. Mishnah. Oichel Eitzel Chama Yehuda. And remember, there's Yehuda, there's Galil. In Galil, the husband of the Chasna Kala kept them separate, but in Yehuda, they got together. We said before, Liba Gaspa, they got together right before the wedding, so they should become more comfortable with each other. So Oichel Eitzel Chama Yehuda. In Yehuda, if like somebody was in his wife's in Kala's house, and he ate with his father-in-law, Shaloi Be'edim, and even though there were no witnesses whatsoever, nevertheless, ain't the Yochel at the time. So when he gets married, he says, she was kind of sunnah, because we're convinced that if you were together with your Kala, surely you had relations, and therefore it was probably you, and you just forgot. Because of Miyachid, we assume that you already had a relation with her, and therefore the reason why she's not a psula anymore is because of you, and you just forgot. You're not being malicious, maybe you just forgot. Says the Gemara, because we use the expression over here, if somebody ate by his father-in-law, all you have to say is be Yehuda. Why say a case of ha'oichel eitzel chama? As if to say, not in all circumstances in Yehuda do we assume that they had a relationship, the chasna kala. So therefore, must be miklal the ikut tuch to be Yehuda. Not everywhere in Yehuda they go through this. Some people did, and some people didn't. Otherwise, you must say that in Yehuda also there were regions. Depends which region you're from. Some people had a meaning like this, some people had a meaning like that. Can I tell you, we actually learned the Braisa that there are different regions. Amar Yehuda says, "Be Yehuda in Yehuda, but in the beginning, in Yehuda they used to get the chassan and kala close. They would be alone in solitude. The chassan and the kala before the chuppah, and the purpose was they should become much friendlier. Ubegalil. And I told you the last time they say historically that was in areas where the hegmon, the governor had that rule that you have to have relations with the governor first. So they didn't want it that the caliphs, because that's the first time that she should do it. But Ratzin, because then she'd be asa to her husband, even if he's Yisrael. So therefore she already had a first experience with her own chassan, and therefore it won't be Baratzin. She'll feel betrayed, and it'll be ba'inus so she can go back to her husband. Ubi Galil, but in Galil, loy hoya oisin kain. In Galil, they never did that. The Yehuda, but another thing. Yehuda, in the beginning, they would have two people, one representing the chassan, one representing the kala, echad loy, echad lo, to actually test the chassan and the kala, to prove one way or another. It's very interesting. And the way Rashi learns, very interesting way Rashi learns, it seems, and it's hard to understand, other Shem learn differently, but Rashi learns that we're worried that each one is going to try to harm the other one. That, for example, the chassan is going to try to say, take the sheet, and even though there was blood on it, he's going to try to dispose of it and say, oh, there was no blood, she's not a psula. And the kala might bring into the room a sheet with already blood on it because she actually isn't a psula, so she'll bring a sheet with blood on it to avoid any scrutiny. So the one who's representing the chassan is going to check the kala, make sure that she doesn't do that, and the one who's representing the kala will make sure the chassan doesn't dispose of the sheet. So they're there because they're worried, and that they're going to deceive each other and try to get out of this whole arrangement. It's very hard to understand. So, like we learned before, chazaka, a person is not going to go through the whole ordeal and having in mind that the next morning you're going to undo it. So, and yet we suspect that maybe there is something on awry, and therefore we don't want anything to go to awry. Therefore, you have these people representing them. So the Gemara, when they go to chuppahs, we have them checking out. But in Galil, they didn't do that. With Galil, we weren't suspicious that maybe she was a ba'ula, whatever it is. So the meaning was not. They more trustworthy, trusting. In Yehuda, in the beginning, but they were so distrusting in Yehuda that actually the Shusbani slept overnight, the first night there. Didn't do that. And then it says, anybody didn't follow this custom that they had in Yehuda, that if you didn't have that meaning in Yehuda, you cannot have tainis psulim. Then you cannot come forward to a bezin with tainis psulim. In which case are we talking about here? If we're talking about the very first case where we started off saying that the meaning was the chassan and kala should get together, they should get together and spend time. And you're telling me that what? That if you don't have this minig of getting together, you don't have time. On the contrary, if you don't have this minig getting together, then you do have a right to claim, hey, I thought she's a psula, we never got together. What's going on over here? So what's the shot? Should have said that the wording should have been anyone who did have the minig. Let's say if we're talking about the next case where we had a person representing the chassan to make sure the kala doesn't cheat and bring a sheet with blood already on it, and we have someone representing the kala to make sure that the chassan doesn't dispose of the sheet. This is called, the shusban in the Mishmah, testing the shusban in. It should have said kol shaloi mushmish b'bailei. Not that if you didn't, it should have said not like noag meaning. It should have said, because regarding the kala, let's say we didn't check out the kala, and the kala brought something in. What are you going to have time to psulim for? There's blood right there. What do you say? On the other hand, if the chassan disposed of it, we can say that if you didn't have it tested, because who's the one who makes claims of tiny psulim? It's the husband, and it's the father, it's the representative of the kala to test the chassan that did he dispose of it, and so on and so forth. So it should be Mushmush, the chassan who got rid of the blood, and he's saying, "Oh, there's a tiny psulim here because I don't see anything." Why don't see anything? Because maybe you dispose of the sheet. So we should be talking about the chassan. Should have said not kosher nog, but kosher mushmush. If you didn't test the chassan and therefore you didn't bother checking him out, and he got rid of the sheet, then if you didn't have somebody to testing it out, maybe he has a tiny psulim because maybe there was a sheet and he got rid of it. You're right. You learn kol shenog. You're right. Just change the words of the brayso around. Say instead of saying kol sheloinog, say in the beginning kol shenog. Anybody who had a meaning that the chassan and kala spend time together alone, then you no longer have tiny psulim. Rava says. What do you mean changing around the word of the brayso? The fact is, it says kosher loinog. You're telling me let's learn kosher. Let's edit the brayso. You don't edit the brayso. It's kosher loinog. Ella versus Rava. Hachi kamar kosher loinog. This is what I meant to say. Kosher loinog meaning galil. People who do not follow galil, the meaning of galil, which is that the chassan and kala should spend no time alone together. Ella meaning Yehuda galil, but instead they follow the meaning of Yehuda galil, which the chassan and kala were alone together. You can no longer claim tainas psulim. That's what it means. You can no longer claim tainas psulim. Rav Ashi says, we're talking about the sefer of the Tani, and actually change the word around instead of noag, say kol shalei mishmish. And then in any case, that if you did not have this meaning of checking out the husband, then you can go and claim. So there's no time of psulim, because maybe he disposed of the sheet. So what Rav Ashi says the same thing as the Baya. Let's edit the brayso. Baya edits the first part of the brayso. Rav Ashi is editing the second part of the brayso, and they're ignoring what the Rava said that you don't edit braysos because you do it often. Mishnah. Achas almanas Yisrael, achas almanas koinim. Whether it's the almana, the widow of Yisrael, the widow of koinim, they're entitled merely to a mana. Kesuvos Daf, the Kesuvos is only 100. Bezdin shel koinim. For other women, we looked a few days ago. There's 200. So Bezdin shel koinim hayagoyvin lepsula abamez. The Bezdin of the koinim has decided that for a psula they'll make it $400. That means even in places where if you're writing psula, you can write whatever you want, and it's written as Taisa says as part of the psula, not as an addition to the psula. And others try to say that even in regions, even in places where they did, because we'll learn later in the Gemara, there were places that didn't write a ksuba because it is accepted. Every husband has to give a ksuba to his wife. So then, like a star bezdin, it's automatic. In that case, if the bezdin of that the kohenim said that's $400, then even if he did not write a ksuba, she's entitled to $400. Chacham had no problem with that. If she's a chashva lady, you can give her 400. Says the Gemara, trying to learn. But the almanas kohenim, what about the widow of a kohenim? The psul of a kohenim is 400, double of a Yisrael, Bas Yisrael. What about the alman of a kohen? It's ksuvos masayim. So it says in the brayso that alman also is double of a Bas Yisrael. She gets 200. Says the Gemara, but now didn't we learn? Achas almanas Yisrael says right here in the Mishnah. Whether you're alman of Yisrael or achas alman of kohen, whether you're alman of a kohenim, ksuvos almanas ksuva generally is 100 unless he specifically changes it. There were two periods. First, they said a psula of a kohen should get 400 zuz and a almana should get 100. Even the chazad the mezalzel, people started to look at the almana of a kohen in a bad way or in a poor way, an undignified way. And why is that? Rashi said because she's getting 100. Now, even though Bas Yisrael also only gets 100, but nevertheless, since kohenim are more chashuv, they're more sensitive. So people, I guess, or at least in their minds, they feel that they're looked down upon more, and it's more of a genai than by Bas Yisrael. But Taisa says because look at the ratio. By Bas Yisrael, psul is 200, almana is 100, half. By a kohen married to a kohen, psul is 400, and an almana is 100. It's a quarter. So somehow or another, people start thinking, oh, the almana of a kohen is worth less than the almana of a Yisrael. So they were mezalzelu. So to decide, you know what, almanas of a kohen should get also half, $200. But then what they saw was they thought they were doing good. They actually harmed the almanas because kim the chazdik kaparshim and I. People said, hey, why should I marry the alman of a kohen? It costs me so much. I can't afford it if it doesn't work out, or if he predeceases his wife. I can marry an alman of Bas Yisrael who was married to a Yisrael, and I won't have to give 100. So nobody married anymore. They were untouchables. Amri Adris, why should I marry Alman Koyin? I'll marry a Psula Bas Yisrael, which is the same amount. Or if I have to marry Alman, I'll marry Alman of Kasro, which is 100. Or I'll marry for the same amount, 200. I can get a Psula Bas Yisrael. What do I need Alman Koyin? Is a Hadin al Messiah. We went back to the original, so there were stages. So they realized sometimes you think you're doing good, and actually it turns out that there are a lot of consequences that are bad. But they realized it, and they went and reformed again. The
Kesuvos in those days, were they written by the husband, or were they written by a Rav or Bezdin or what? Sefer?
They weren't written by a Sefer. We'll see later who pays for it and all that. Who pays for the Kesuvos? Bezdin, who pays the Sefer for the Kesuvos? Bezdin
Sorry, can I just ask, if it went back to the original, so does a Basula Bas Koyin, is she 400 or 200?
No, that's 400. Psula Bas Koyin was 400. The bezin of the Koyinim for that time, it was the changes were only for Alman.
Right, thanks.
Everyone understood that marrying a Koyin, because marrying a Koyin has these advantages. You can eat truma, she can eat truma, and so on and so forth. So what people understood, it's the Almana that they didn't understand. Bezin shel koinim. I'm going to read a bit more. Like bezin shel koinim b'vado. We don't only mean bezin of koinim. If the bezin said that anyone who came from this family, who is a very distinguished family, or that family, they're entitled to a larger ksub and they can get more. If they want to behave as like the koinim, they have definitely every right to do whatever it is. and the chiddush here is, I mean, listen, truth matters, anybody can do whatever they want. In the Kesuvos, the chiddush here is they put it in the Kesuvos, and in the Kesuvos it says the chazalechi, that you deserve, and they would put in there 400, the chazalechi, the arba meis, and they had a right to. The chiddush is that you can say that this is what you deserve, because you came from a distinguished family, or you're from marrying a kohen or something, or a bas kohen. They had a right to put that in. What do you call it? Makes a question. It says, if somebody wants to do like the Kohen do, like a Bas Yisrael marrying a Kohen or a Bas Kohen marrying Yisrael, they can do it. Bas Yisrael, look, so it seems from here, the only ones who have a right to do it is going Bas Yisrael or Kohen or Bas Kohen Yisrael, but Bas Yisrael, Hudi Katzat Kuna. At least in those cases, there's an angle of Kuna. Therefore, the chiddush is that you can put it in the Kesuvos and say Chazilech, that you have a right for it. But Bas Yisrael Yisrael, seems to me, but a Bas Yisrael Yisrael, I don't care what distinguished family they come in. You want to give extra pleasure, you can write in the Kesuvos whatever amount you want to add. But to put that in the Kesuvos, the Chazilech that you're suitable, it's suitable for you. Where do you know that from? Says you want a loima boy coming. No, on the contrary. Loima boy, you don't have to say Bas Yisrael Yisrael. You can't, you don't have to mention Bas Yisrael Yisrael, definitely the loimotzi amala, ilu kamayilach. They're both a Yisrael. So he can't say to her, why should I pay you more money? You come from a family of Yechasim. What do you call it? I'm not better than you. I didn't elevate you in any way whatsoever. So you can't have any kindness to her. And if she's from a distinguished family, yes, she's entitled to more money. But in the case of a Bas Yisrael to a Kohen, he can say to her, I have to pay you more money. You've just been elevated. You joined the club. You joined this elitist club called Kohenim, and you just joined in. Why should I have to give you also more money in the Kesuvos? I've elevated you already. Why do I have to give you more in the Kesuvos? A malay commercial. In other words, the chiddush of Brisa is that even the main chiddush of Brisa is that a Bas Yisrael to a Kohen, still the Kesuvos, she's entitled to more money. And he can't argue, but what do I have to give him more money? Already you're marrying a Kohen. That's good enough for you. You can't say that. But a Bas Yisrael to a Yisrael, if she comes from a distinguished family, of course she's entitled to more money. Okay, now we're going to learn a series of cases where the husband makes one claim, and she, until now we were talking about she said nothing, or she did not, or she argued with the husband. So we had all these cases as far as the husband is concerned, he's believed. Now we're talking about cases where she says she doesn't deny it at all, but she explains the circumstance in a way which benefits her. The thing is, and bear in mind, he doesn't know for certainty what happened. So he is always a shema. He's always maybe. And she is saying definitively, this is what happened. She is a bori. And the general rule is, if you have a bori and a shema, what happens? Do you believe the one who's bori, the one who's shema? The bori wants money, and the shema says, I don't know if I owe it to you or not. There generally is an argument. If bori v'shema, bori adif or not, because countering that bori, we have a cheskes moment. The money sitting in the other person's pocket. Is a bori sufficient to take money away from somebody or not? So keep that in mind. The Gemara will talk about it. Let's go to the Mishnah. I know he says Isha, somebody marries a woman, suddenly found that she was a bull. I met her. Her claim is, and she doesn't deny it, she said yes. But Misha Rastani and Nasti, it happened after we got engaged and I was raped. And you're a Yisrael, so therefore we can stay married. Plus, I'm entitled to my full psula. You feel got flooded. Too bad. It happened after we got engaged. It happened. I had no choice here. Who I mean, his argument is no key, but his time is it happened before we got engaged. Now he doesn't know that for a fact. He's just saying, how do I know it didn't happen before we got engaged? You're already a bula. You're already a bula. If you're already a bula, then we had a machlekes of Sheshus and Rabbah both say you're entitled only to 100. And what do you call it? And the Rashi says, and Rava says that mekatos, you're entitled to nothing. Well, you mekatos. So the Mishnah says there's an argument. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, then she's believed because she's a body versus his shema. If you believe her and they stay married, no, we don't rely on what she says. We are going to assume that since he says that maybe it happened before, we're going to assume the worst. That actually happened before they got engaged, and therefore the whole thing mekatos. And we believe that maybe she deceived him. She needs to bring more compelling proof. Her say-so is not good enough. She has to present the person that she had relations with, or whatever it is. She has to bring some kind of a proof. In other words, a bari is not better. Talking about Itma, we learned a general question. Reuben says, Shimon, you owe me $100. Many days. Shimon said, I don't know. I don't know if I owe you money or not. I can't remember. So it's a body versus the Shem. Nachman says Potter. Why? Because body v'shema, body adi, body is better. Leave money the way it is, and therefore body is not better. Taste in order to discuss other cases where we see, for example, as a nizik and a mazik. We see the Yishosh as a part that a shor, let's say, gored another the animal, and there was a vlad over there. The nizik says that your animal to the mazik. The nizik says the victim says to the mazik perpetrator, not only did your animal kill my animal, but also killed the vlad as well. And the mazik says no, it was miscarried before. Now over there we have a whole discussion there. We believe the nizik or the mazik, and how come over there we don't believe the nizik? And here we're saying that body v'shem according to Rabbi Yehuda and Abhuna, body shem body is adif. There's a big difference. There's two levels of bari. There's a strong bari and a weak bari. There's a strong shema and a weak shema. Over there, when the nizik says bari to the mazik, definitely your animal gored my animal and caused the miscarriage. Does he know that for a fact? He wasn't there. So the body is a weak body. He knows that the mazik can't dispute it. So therefore, a body where you know that nobody can dispute what you're saying is called a weak bari. And the mazik of the shema is a strong shema. He has every right to say, I don't know. I wasn't there. How do I know? Maybe this is what happened. So because the body is weak and the shema is strong, over there we say body is not better. Over here, when the lender comes along and says, you owe me $100, he knows that you can deny it. So therefore, it's a strong body. And yet he comes to that insistence. It's a strong body. In fact, there's an expression more of a basa, chazaka ein adam taveya, there's a chazaka that people don't make up stories like that unless there's something behind it. So the body is a strong body because he knows you can deny it. The shema in our case is a very weak shema, because what do you mean you don't remember if you owe the money? Either you do or you don't. You should know if you owe somebody money or not. So the shema is a very weak shema. No, you don't have the chutzpah to lie. You don't have the chutzpah to lie, and because you don't have the chutzpah to lie, so therefore you say maybe. This way nobody accuses you of being a liar. So that's why over here the body is a strong body. So,
but don't we say? But, I mean, in that case of the mono, wouldn't you say he's got a migui?
What migui? Who has a migui? The lender or the borrower?
The borrower. I mean, the borrower could say no. He could lie. He's chosen not to lie because, and don't we say because he could have lied and he could have said no, I don't know you at all. So we believe him.
No, you only say migui to support what you're saying. But what are you saying? You're saying you don't know. So there's nothing to support it. If he would have said, he could. This is the general case of migui. If he would have said, I paid you back, then we say he has a migui. He could have said a better story. I never borrowed in the first place. Because the moment you say you paid you back, it sounds like, yes, you're right, I borrowed. And it gives credence to the lender, but I paid you back. It's less believable than a case that says, what are you talking about? I never borrowed money in the first place. Then we have no idea who to believe. That's a migui.
Right.
But migui has to support a valid taina. Your taina here is you don't know. So pay the money. He says, yes, you do, but you don't know. So obviously you should pay. But the other opinion said, no, a body is not strong enough. Cheskas mammon is very strong. The fact that the money is sitting by you, in order, we have a rule, even though the laws of probability says that he probably owes the money, that's not good enough to extract money. Because the person has a cheskas mammon. Chazaka says where the money is, let it stay there until the other person can make compelling proof. Otherwise, you're able to signal. Okay, so what I do with our Mishnah? It seems how the Rab Huna Rabbi Yehuda. This Rab Huna Rabbi Yehuda said that Bari Ode follows Shmuel, who made a comment about something about the Mishnah that we're going to learn. Now we learned in the Mishnah. We learned later on in the Mishnah. This woman came into town. We don't know who she is, and she came in pregnant, and we don't have no idea who the child is, who's the father of Amrullah. And they said to her, "Mativa Shaluba, who's the child? Kosher child." Mom said, "What is this?" And each plain he was a kohen, and she said, "Yet it came from this and this person, and he was a kohen. The child is perfect." Is and she's totally believed because she's a body. We don't know, so she's a body versus the Shema body adif, and Rabbi Yeshua argues and says she's not believed. Halacha has to bring some evidence. Rabbi Yehuda name Shmuel says the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, which said about a body b'shema body adif. In that case, now that's not talking about money matters at all. That's talking about Isser, right? The status of this child. Then came along Shmuel. One Rabbi Shmuel by Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Yehuda, said to Rabbi Yehuda, Shinina. Rabbi Shmuel by Yehuda was another student of Shmuel. Shmuel always used to call Rabbi Yehuda, if you remember, Shinina, you clever one. So the students of Rabbi of Shmuel also, or his friends of Rabbi Yehuda, also call him Shinna, you clever one. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda was the favorite student of Rav, then he moved to Shmuel. They said to Rabbi Yehuda, Shinna, you clever one. Amridlon, you yourself told us, Mashmei de Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, that the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, not only in the case of Isser over there by Muberes, but Av B'Deshayna, also in the earlier missions, even when it comes to money matters. Now what? The body B'Shem, body Adif. My Av B'Deshayna, so what do you mean also? What's a chiluk? Because over here, when it comes to Isser, there's nothing standing in the way of saying, okay, let's believe her. But over here, there's a cheskes mammon versus the bari. The bari says that you owe with the ksuva. The cheskes mammon said the money is sitting by you, you don't owe with the ksuva. And yet you, Shmuel said, you said the name of Shmuel, that no, that body is body even against cheskes mammon, which would mean that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Huna, who say that money be yotcha, and the other guy says, Eini Yedeya, and we follow the bari, follows Rabbi Gamliel, not Mishnah. Even though we have a chazaka verse against it, body's better. So Lema, let us say that Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Gamliel, it seems that Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Huna follow Gamliel, and Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Yechon, and the Amrik, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Yechon, they follow Rabbi Yeshua. That body's not better. It seems that they're arguing exactly the same machlekes as the Mishnah, and that's the problem. Why would you have a room to argue in the case of the Mishnah? So Rab Nachman is going to distance himself from the Mishnah and say that the case of Moni Libiyotcha is unrelated to the case of the Mishnah. And that goes as follows. Rab Nachman says, Anod Amri, Rab Nachman says, body b'shem body lavadif. And that's going to be the halacha, by the way. That body by money, I say you owe me $100, you say you don't know. Body lavadif, it's not good enough to take the money out, as we'll see in a second. Now, and yet I can hold like Rabbi Gamliel when it comes to her in Ksuva, we're going to believe her and she will get a Ksuva. What's the difference? So I'm giving two possible reasons why it's different. Number one, when does Rabbi Gamliel say in the Mishnah she has a migud? She said what? She said that no, I was had relations with a guy, but you should know it happened before. It happened, before we got married, right? She could have said, because she could have much better time. She could have said, I was a mukas eitz. I never had relations with a man. I was a mukas eitz, and it happened after we got engaged, and therefore she's entitled to a full $200, which will be a much better argument. First of all, she'd look better, that she had no relations with anybody before. Plus, she would get more money. That would have been a much better argument. And not only that, when she says Mishirastani Nanasti, she got even worse. She could have said Mukas 8. And what would be the benefit besides the fact, now Mukas 8, after they got engaged, she's also entitled to $200. But what's the mile of being Mukas 8? Not only in general in the look, but much more than that. And that is because Mishirastani and Anasti, first of all, if he was a Kohen, you can no longer with him. Even if you're not a Kohen, if you remember we looked at Mari Vamas, if this person eventually dies, she becomes a widow, she cannot live with a Kohen. Because while she was married to somebody, she had a relation with another person, even though it was forced by rape, she can never live with a kohen again. So she harmed herself by saying Mishra Stani and Nasti. If she would have just said Mukas 8, if her husband dies, predeceased her, she can marry a kohen in the future. So if she would have said a better argument than what she says now, and she doesn't, must be telling the truth. So Migli is, there's a big machlek, and Migli is like there's a Kesuvos or a logic. But if we say it's a logic, we give her, by Migli, we give you the strength of the argument you could have said. So it would have been a better argument. So that's why the Gemara says we believe her, because she has a Migli, she could have said a much better argument. That's number one. Number two, in the next Mishnah, we're going to learn where she says, I was a Mukas 8 Ani. And she says a Mukas 8. Before we got married, I was a Mukas 8. She could have said a better time, I was a Mukas 8 after we got engaged. And there's a big difference. A Mukas 8 before you got engaged, the Chacham say you only get $100. A Mukas 8 after you got engaged, you get the full $200. So it would have been a better argument to get more money. So if she says, he claims that you had an affair, and she says, no, it was a Mukas 8 before we got married. So that case over there, again, she could have said a better argument. I was a Mukas 8 after we got engaged, I would have got more money for Kesuvos. Therefore, we believe her. So in both of those cases, there's a migli. But in the case of you owe me $100, and the other guys, I don't know. There's no migli there. So because there's no migli there, we're not going to, bari is not strong enough. It's a bari without a migli. But a bari with a migli, coupled with a migli, we will believe. Says the Gemara. So again, you know what the Gemara says over there, because together with a bari, there's a migi. My migi, there's nothing to support. The guy is claiming you owe me $100. Nothing to support. There's no migi there. That's number one. Not only you forget the migi for a minute, there's also a chazaka. If you believe the chazaka is stronger than migi, that's a discussion in its own right. I'm going to tell you that she has a chazaka. The chazaka is that it happened. This guy is saying it happened before you got engaged, and she's saying it happened after you got engaged. The chazaka is she was born a psula, and therefore she was probably a psula to as late as possible. Therefore, it's easier to say that she became a psula after she got engaged, which is later than before she got engaged. That's the chazaka. So she has a chazaka that, and plus there's a cheskes heta. The chazaka is that she's either way she's mutter, but the chazaka is that it happened as late as possible. In the case of the guy who's demanding $100, my chazaka is like it's a pure bari in isolation. There's nothing to support his claim that you owe me $100. So Gemara concludes, in fact, it makes sense that the two arguments are totally unrelated. And in our Mishnah, it's a body together with a migli or a body together with chazaka. And the Ketuvos like we answered, because Nachman himself is the one who said that we must say that Nachman follows Rabbi Gamliel. There's no contradiction here. Why not? Because otherwise we have a problem in our halacha. So we have a problem from one halacha to the next. The kind on the one hand, we have a rule in Shas halacha Nachman bedinim. When it comes to dinim, Nachman himself was the Av Bezin. He was the son-in-law of the chief of the Reish Galusa, and he was the Av Bezin. And the halacha is always like Nachman when it comes to dini. So when it comes to body, $100 in Shema, I don't know if I owe you. The halacha like Nachman, body adif. And in our Mishnah, and Nachman holds you don't believe him. So that means that Nachman, the halacha, the body is not adif. And yet, yet when it comes to the Mishnah, the halacha like Gamliel. How can it be that we paskin of Nachman, the body is not adif, and yet we paskin like Gamliel, the Mishnah, the body is adif? Must be that you have to uncouple the two discussions and say that in the case of the Mishnah, the body comes with a migui. Like we answered, it's a good, must be that the two arguments and cases are totally unrelated to each other. Okay, we'll continue.